Good morning and welcome. Today with us we have Mcintyre Brown, who is the Associate Director of Displays and Broadcast Equipment at Futuresource. Chris, welcome. Now, ISE, I think you're one of the longest standing attendees. You've been probably since the very beginning.
I think I have. I think this is maybe it's my 10th year now, so it's changed a lot since I first came. One of the things that I was thinking before this discussion was, when I first joined the company, we used to time everything for Infocom in the US. It was the center of everything. All of our clients' HQs used to meet out there. And if you look at the way that this show has grown now, I think if you look at product announcements and launches, they all happen at ISE now. If you look at where our clients from the Asian HQs come, that's where a lot of our client base is at. Everything is being timed for ISE. So I think it's a fantastic measure of where this show is going, and also for us being a UK-based analyst company, it means we can bring a big team out, which is great.
Yeah. Now you can remember it from the Brussels days. I think you've got over 10 people here this week.
Yeah, we have 10 analysts. So one of the other things that's great for us is when my title is displays, but obviously we go way beyond that. So we're looking at things like pro audio, IoT, drones now. There's so much going on at this show. It's so diverse. We're talking about smart buildings and smart cities. It's a fantastic show for us, and because it's so close to home, we can bring a big team out with us.
We may touch on the smart cities in a second. There's one thing that you're doing which I think is quite unique, and it's a lot of work, and I know that you'll probably be working the whole weekend. You've got this massive report coming out on Monday to your customers.
A show report. Yeah, absolutely. So as a company, we do a lot of shows, whether that be consumer or broadcast or whatever that may be. It's the first time that we've actually tried to do a show report for ISE, but obviously a lot of our clients can't make the trip across, so it's a summation of what we see. It doesn't capture absolutely everything, but it's a summation of what we think is important at the show, and hopefully it adds some value for our clients and actually non-clients as well. It's a free download for that report, so please people come on our site and download that.
Okay, Monday morning we'll be telling people where to get hold of that.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's one thing for doing it for BET, but it's another thing for doing it for 44,000 square feet.
Yeah,
how many halls?
And to be clear, we don't capture everything. But what we try and do, it's written predominantly for our client base, so a lot of that is display driven. So that will be the main focus. I'm sure we'll miss things, and apologies if we do, but it will be a fairly comprehensive piece, yeah.
What's the main trends that you've seen? I'm sure you're going to mention LED. Everybody on this show has mentioned LED, but what's the thing that you've seen that's most impressed you this week?
Ultra high resolution, of course, and we get to that by tiled technology. So one of the areas which we look at in the company, super narrow bezel LCD has been around for a long time now, and you see that as a big part of the show. If you look at the sales volumes, that's kind of 20% of the market, of the commercial display markets. That's a big area. LED, absolutely, how can you not mention that? We were very fortunate, we caught that trend early, so we are on our third iteration of that report now. For me, what's really interesting is you see a lot of that production was coming from China, and those guys were struggling to figure out how they came into international markets. Now we see NEC and others really investing heavily in that. It looks like a technology which has moved from being disruptive to actually here to stay. And with that comes a lot of challenges in content, how you handle content, the infrastructure that runs behind these walls. So it's a great opportunity for the business.
It's going to have an impact. The LED stuff's going to have an impact on the video wall market to some degree, I would assume, even though the video wall stuff seems to be growing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a place for everything, right? So LED at the moment is incredibly expensive. I think the interesting thing we see when we talk about narrow pixel pitch, we talk 3 mm and below. What's happening is because we're chasing down those pixel pitches, some of the 4 mm and bigger is actually becoming pretty cost effective. Starting to challenge projection. So one of the unique things that we do as an analyst company is we look at projection, commercial flat, LED, and all the various iterations underneath that. So we start to look at how those products compete in vertical. You mentioned control room, it's a really interesting application, still dominated by rear projection cube.
Yep.
LCD has some challenges there, but we think now pixel pitch actually has a play, so we expect to see more of that. But even out into retail, I know obviously you're very focused on retail yourself. There's some fantastic opportunities there, and we're already seeing some of those installations going in. So
we had Jeff Greenberg from Hyperwall on the show yesterday, the control room stuff. He said there's big opportunities for LED.
Yeah, and there's a huge install base. And I think when we saw super narrow bezel LCD come out, there was very much a focus on, well, how do we get into control room? It's had some success in video-based applications like surveillance and traffic management and things like that, but It's got some challenges in some more kind of SCADA-based, utilities process control. But there's a big installed base of cubes there. So I think narrow pixel pitch can get there. It has some challenges itself in how you control brightness and contrast, which is being worked on at the moment. But that's something we expect to change as we go forward. Yeah.
Have you seen anything behind closed doors that you could hint about the last couple of days?
Probably not. What can I say? I mean, I think most of what we've seen from a display standpoint, OLED, of course, we're obviously going to mention that now. Some of that is behind closed doors for some vendors. We see some of it out on the show floor. One of the things that we always think as analysts is we quite often get pulled back down by our clients because we talk too much about the future, and I think a lot of people are very excited about OLED. It's got a long way to come before it's commercially viable in business applications. Some fantastic opportunities, but we think that's a long way to go. So I think for me the exciting things are really from an LED perspective, obviously narrow pixel pitch. I think projection's still got a huge amount of relevance. We see some really interesting mapping technology now. If you marry that with solid state, we're getting some really high resolution products coming out now as well. So actually I think projection's got some relevance in verticals like retail, which is, we used to be asked many years ago, a projection vendor would come up and say, what about signage? And we would kind of laugh because it just wasn't a suitable technology. Now actually I think that's changing.
Right.
So there's some relevance for that. So there's lots of different pockets of activity happening in the various display products which make them more relevant, and I think there's a place for everything out there.
Now, my last question for you is about the broadcast side of things. Obviously you cover broadcast as part of your world. IBC would be an event, obviously you do, and NAB in the US. The broadcast world has come together very quickly with IT, hasn't it? So that you go to these things as very IT focused, data storage, cloud storage, whatever else. With ISE, is there any crossover, any lap?
1,000,000%. So interesting for me, my work in broadcast has been in the last sort of 3 years or so, so I'm comparatively new to it. It's a huge area. I think it leads the way in things like IP. We are moving that way very, very quickly. I think in the AV industry, Pro AV, we're a little bit further behind in that. Compression, nobody really talks about compression at ISE, and I don't really understand why, because it's key to everything, particularly in signage networks. So I see a lot of synergy. I think the overall discussion about IT AV, we're at a Pro AV trade show. When I first started, the language we talk about now, infrastructure, networking, broadband speeds, whatever it may be, they're everywhere. Solutions. That conversation has changed completely from 10 years ago. So I think, yes, we're learning a lot from the broadcast space, and obviously acquisition as well of content. Link that into things like VR as well, where we do a lot of work at the moment in sort of virtual reality worlds and augmented reality, which again, you sort of see on the show floor a little bit, but there's some really interesting case studies there. A huge amount is being driven by the broadcast side. And one of the actually things that I was thinking before we came here is, I wonder what the show looks like in 10 years. And I wonder do we have Cisco and Microsoft with the biggest stands in the whole place? And actually, maybe, So I think the world's changing. Do we call this a Pro AV trade show in 10 years' time? Who knows?
Maybe not. That's a lovely way to end. Chris, thank you very much.